Hi, this is Gail Sokol, and welcome to the fifth part of our series, Opening the Cookie Jar.
Welcome to Baking Radio. Learn the art and science of baking with author, educator, and award-winning chef, Gail Sokol. Whether you've been baking your whole life or you're brand new to the world of baking and you're looking to build your confidence and learn new skills in the kitchen, you're in the right place. This is Baking Radio.
So on today's show, we are at the finish line, folks. We're coming up to the last two types of cookies, categories, pipe cookies and wafer cookies. And these are phenomenal. So wait till you hear about these. Pipe cookies are just that. They are made from a soft dough, and it's almost a batter that can be easily pushed through a pastry bag, and I love to fit the pastry bag with a pastry tip to form cookies of various shapes. And you really don't want a pipe cookie dough to change shape in the oven, so very often they have no chemical leaveners, so no baking powder, no baking soda. They tend to be super simple, with a low protein flour like cake flour or all-purpose flour, and sometimes they even have cornstarch added. Now, why would they do that? Well, cornstarch is more starch and no protein. So the starch creates tenderness, and that's why. That ensures that the cookie will be tender and more light in texture. There won't be a chewy texture in this type of cookie with that lower protein flour as well. And these cookies, they actually just melt in your mouth. They're wonderful. Recipes for pipe cookies almost always contain a solid fat. So think butter. Butter tastes the best. Sometimes they can have shortening. Shortening doesn't taste as good. It doesn't feel as good on the tongue either because it has a higher melting point than butter. So very often you can taste that shortening even hours after you've had that cookie already. But butter just tastes so much better. It has flavor to it. Recipes for piped cookies tend to use the creaming method of mixing, and that's why you see this solid room temperature butter or fat. Some recipes have eggs, some don't. So they will vary. These doughs may also contain an acidic ingredient like citrus juice for flavor, like a lemon juice or a little orange juice, and to prevent too much browning. And you never thought about it, right? Why? What does that have to do with browning? The citrus juice and browning. Well, acidic batters that are acidic, they don't brown. Acidic doughs and batters don't brown as much as less acidic ones. So this is a good fact to remember. If you don't want your cookie dough to brown, make sure it's acidic. So that's why sometimes a little wee tad of lemon juice or an acid is added, even cream of tartar, something like that. I'm going to give you a super simple recipe, and it really is a simple recipe. There's 5 ingredients for a piped cookie that you can easily make. And the recipe, I call it vanilla strips. I've been making it with my youngest daughter since she was 3 years old, and she has loved this type of recipe. So let me explain how it's made. Makes about 2 dozen cookies, and it tastes very much like a spritz cookie because it's really from the same type of dough. And there's little, like I said, little like hand cranked machinery, almost like pressers that you can actually put a dough like this through and pipe out little star shapes or little flower shaped cookies known as spritz. But this is actually even easier, and it's more homemade. So what you're going to do is you're going to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. You're going to spray 2 sheet pans with nonstick cooking spray, and don't use parchment paper. Another trick, if you spray the sheet pans with nonstick cooking spray, when you pipe out your dough, very often if you have parchment paper, the parchment paper will stick to the dough, and as you pull back to end that cookie, the parchment paper comes with it. And there are tricks to prevent this, but I find just spraying the sheet pan with nonstick cooking spray is the easiest fix. So you're going to take 2 sticks or 1 cup of unsalted butter, softened again. Make sure it's softened, not melted. and you're going to take 1/2 cup of confectioner's sugar, and you're going to put them together in an electric mixing bowl. You're going to use the paddle attachment. Again, this is the creaming method. And you're going to cream them on medium speed until well combined. Not light and fluffy, but well combined. Light and fluffy would mean we're trying to get air into it. And that's also going to bring a little leavening. We don't want these cookies to change. We don't want them to change shape. So we're going to just mix that butter and sugar until it's combined. That's it. Okay? Now, if your confectioner's sugar is lumpy, put it through a sieve first, just in case. But if it's not lumpy, don't worry about it. Now, next, you're going to add 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour and 1/4 cup of cornstarch. Remember, that starchy quality that will produce more tenderness and prevent more gluten from forming because there's less gluten-forming proteins in this particular dough. So you're going to add flour, the cornstarch, and a teaspoon of pure vanilla extract to that butter mixture. And you're going to beat this well on medium speed until everything is combined. You don't want to see any streaks of cornstarch or flour. Next, you're going to take the mixture and you're going to put it into a piping bag. You might have to do it twice. So you want to fill your bag, your pastry bag, and you want to fit it with a large star tip. Some have couplers, which means you put the tip on at the bottom. I use the disposable bags, which are so much easier, the pastry bags. So you just want to cut a hole in the bottom and put your star tip through the top. And you can get large star tips online and some specialty cake stores. And I love a large star tip, but you can use any tip you want. And you're going to not fill your bag too high, so fill it halfway. And then you're going to pipe this dough onto the cookie sheets in short lines. All right, so like strips, just like the name of the cookie, in short lines, about 2 inches long. If you want smaller cookies, you can make them smaller. If you want longer cookies, make them longer. And you want to leave a space between each. They're not going to rise too much, so you might want to leave about 1/2 inch to 1 inch between each. You're not going to have to worry about one baking into the other like you would for, let's say, a chocolate chip cookie, because there's no chemical leaveners here, right? We hope that they're going to stay in the same shape approximately that they go into when they come out of the oven as they went into the oven. And you're going to bake them for 15 minutes. They should only be pale golden, pale. And if they're even lighter than that, that's fine. Let them sit on that sheet pan until they're cool. And then with an offset spatula, you get them off. But you don't want them too brown on the bottom. Sometimes if you make one as a test to see how they do with your sheet pans, the darker your sheet pan, the darker your cookies will be. So make sure that you don't overbake. If you know your sheet pan's super dark, you can either use parchment if you want, something to protect it in between the sheet pan and the dough, or just bake it for less, or put the cookie sheet on a higher rack. Just make sure it doesn't get too brown from the top. And there you have it. They're super easy. 15 minutes and you have vanilla strips. Now, I like to dip these in melted chocolate, just like the ends in melted chocolate, and then some little nonpareils. So festive. And if there are any left over, you're only making 2 dozen, but you can easily double this recipe because it's just butter, sugar, and flour and cornstarch. It's really not much. Only five ingredients. There you have it. Super easy. So the last type of cookie, we've finally made it to the last type, the eighth. The eighth category is the wafer cookie. And these are the crispiest and the thinnest cookies you can ever make. Ever. And you can't eat just one. I guarantee it. These cookies are also referred to as tuiles, as I would say, because I'm not French. Tuiles are spelled Tuiles, tuiles. It's the French word for roof tile. And if you were in French, they would refer to them as tuiles, tuiles. And it's mimicking a thin roof tile. That's what they look like. Traditionally, these tuiles are put onto a sheet pan, very, very thin batter, and they're put on some form of a form where they will bend slightly, just like a roof tile is slightly bent. But we can do so much more with them. Let me continue. I mean, there are wonderful things that you can do with these. I consider these wafer cookies to have special powers. I really think they do. At least in my opinion, they have special powers. So what's their special power? Well, when they come out of the oven, yeah, most cookies are soft. Most cookies, tend to get firmer as they cool, but these are malleable. Okay? You can do stuff with them. They can be shaped. They can be lifted up. They are shape shifters. And as they cool, they firm up. The sugar in them actually recrystallizes and it becomes very crisp in texture. So you can place a warm wafer cookie over the bottom of a small cup, like the upside down of a small cup. And once cooled, you can have a cookie cup. And what can you put in that cookie cup? Anything. Ice cream, mousse, anything you want. They're amazing. Or you can roll up the warm cookie over the handle of a wooden spoon or a small dowel rod and slide it off and have a spiraled or pirouette cookie. And sometimes I will make a long, bake a long square of them and then just take a pizza cutter and form thin strips, just cut thin strips off the warm cookie and coil them around a wooden spoon's handle. And after they cool, I slide them off and they look like little pig's tails. I mean, they are amazing. And that is a fabulous garnish for a slice of cake on top of ice cream, mousse, anything you want to garnish. They're fabulous, sort of like a little corkscrew. So there are a few types of tuiles that I want to talk about, or a few types of wafer cookies. One is like a thin, wispy vanilla cookie. Think of those manufactured pirouettes that you can buy, that you can purchase in the store. Or think of a fortune cookie that you might have eaten with Chinese food, for instance. Those are actually wafer cookies. Those are tuiles. And yes, I have made my own fortune cookies. And I would love to make that for you on a video. So we will do that. So these are a type of wafer cookie. The other type of wafer cookie is made on top of the stove. It's not just a thin batter that you make, let's say, in a mixing bowl. Their batter is almost made like a candy. It's got corn syrup in it and brown sugar and butter. And once it's made on the stove, it can be portioned into sheet pans and baked off where it becomes like very thin nut brittle. And it's buttery and it's nutty. And if you've ever heard of something called a Florentine, that's this type of tuile. They're very thin. Some of them have chopped fruit in them. Some of them have nuts in them. And what you do is you can coat one side with chocolate. I like to sandwich them with chocolate. And I even have a nutty Florentine in my newest book, Baking with Success. They are so good. They are habit forming. I've made both types of these for competitions. I've garnished many of my desserts with these, and they are extraordinary. They will, I guarantee, or your money back, you will get a compliment if you put these on a cake or a brownie or ice cream or mousse. These cookies can take the most mundane, ho-hum dessert and elevate it beyond your wildest dreams. So I was once making a New Year's Eve dinner, and sometimes people end up coming in the kitchen to watch me plate my desserts before New Year's. And sometimes I go a little crazy. And I had this just plain old chocolate cake. It was like a flourless chocolate cake, but I had made tuiles. I had made big round ones, and I didn't curl them. I just left them big and round. And I was going to put them right into the cake standing up. So I had nice height. So the cake was really creamy. And when I put this big, crunchy tuile on top, and then I served it with a side of homemade ice cream, I had people coming in and going, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing? What are you doing? What is that? Oh, we're going to get that. Oh my God." They were raving. So it will guarantee you a compliment, maybe even a marriage proposal. I don't know. So if you recall, I did a show, how to add texture and crunch to a plated dessert a while back. And I discussed this wafer cookie because this wafer cookie, I have an entire chapter in my new book, Baking with Success, that is devoted to how to garnish your desserts with these wafer cookies. And I gave a recipe for a simple wafer cookie in that particular podcast show. Today, I'm going to give you the actual recipe from my first book about professional baking. And these are pirouettes, but they're polka dotted. And you'd think, well, how am I going to do that? That's not going to be easy to do. Well, it's super easy to do. All right, super easy. So hold on to your hats. It's super, super easy. So to make polka-dotted pirouettes, you preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And in the bowl of an electric mixer, using your paddle attachment, you're going to blend egg whites, 2 large egg whites, and you're going to add half a cup of superfine sugar. And you're going to blend that on medium speed until just foamy. Okay, back up. I know what you're asking. What is superfine sugar? Well, superfine sugar is just granulated sugar that's been pulverized, so it's even finer. And we've talked about it on previous shows before. A lot of bartenders use it in things like simple syrups so that it will melt very easily with water or different liqueurs so they can make their fancy schmancy drinks that are usually sweet. But superfine sugar is incredible for things like meringues or cookies like this. Now, you can find superfine sugar in the grocery store. I bet you've never looked for it, but you can. And if you can't find it, just take some granulated sugar and whirl it around a blender or food processor, and you got yourself some superfine sugar. So you need a half a cup of that with 2 large egg whites, and you're going to mix it until it's just foamy. Again, remember, paddle attachment. And then on low speed, you're going to add 1/3 cup, 1/3 cup of cake flour. And you're going to add 2 tablespoons of unsalted melted butter. Make sure the butter's melted. That's it. That's what you're going to do. You're going to mix it. It's going to look almost like the consistency of heavy cream. A little bit thicker, but that's your batter. That is your pirouette or your wafer batter. So you're going to remove 2 tablespoons of this batter and you're going to put it to a smaller bowl. Just put it into a smaller bowl. And in that bowl, you're going to mix 1 teaspoon of unsweetened cocoa powder. Just mix it in really well so there's no cocoa powder showing. And the batter is going to turn dark. So it's going to be a chocolate batter. Now, if you can't eat cocoa powder or chocolate and you want to make a different color, because we're going to make polka dots, use food coloring. If you want to use a different color, use a few drops of red or green. Make sure that it's a real contrast with the original batter of your actual tuile, your wafer cookie. And you're going to place this cocoa batter into a pastry bag, and you're going to fit it with a small plain tip. If you don't have a plain tip, just cut the edge off, the end off, because you want to make it nice and tiny. And then you're going to put it aside. What I like to do when I have a pastry bag fitted with, a small little tip and it's already cut and I have a batter that's sort of oozy, I will put it inside a glass, standing so that the tip is facing down at the bottom of the cup, and that will actually prevent it from you making a mess all over your kitchen. Just put it aside for a minute. We'll come back to it in a second. Now, on a parchment-lined sheet pan. Now, I don't use parchment-lined sheet pans. If you don't have a Silipat mat or a silicone mat-lined sheet pan or a sheet pan that you can fit with a silicone liner, try to get one if you can. It might be a great thing to have, but you're going to use those because no sticking will occur. It'll be very easy to get your batter off. You're going to place a teaspoonful of batter. Literally take a teaspoon and put a teaspoon of batter. Now, I want to tell you one thing. Some of my silicone mats don't fit my sheet pans. They're a little too big. So you know what I do? I flip my sheet pan upside down. You heard me, upside down, and put my silicone mat on the bottom of the sheet pan. So now the sheet pan's facing upside down. I have the silicone liner on the top. And now I put my teaspoonfuls of batter all around. You might want to do maybe only 4 to 6 spoonfuls of batter. You want to leave a lot of room in between them because they will spread. And you want to use a small spoon or offset spatula, and you're going to spread the batter into a 3-inch circle. So the batter's going to be white looking. You're going to take that teaspoon, and then with that little offset spatula, the one with the rounded edge that you have, with that little kink in it. Spread the batter into a 3-inch circle. If you don't have an offset spatula, use a spoon, but you want to get it into about a 3-inch circle. If it's not perfect, don't worry about it. Repeat the above procedure with all the batter, but you may only have 1 or 2 sheet pans, and you don't want to do this too far in advance because once they bake, again, they come out malleable only for a short period of time. It's sort of like a Cinderella situation. All right, she only has till midnight. Well, we only have a few minutes. And then we have to, make these things or they're going to get hard. So once we spread 4 to 6 of these little rounds on our sheet pan, we're going to place it. We're going to take our cocoa batter. Remember the cocoa batter that you had in your fitted pastry bag with the little plain tip? And you're going to pipe tiny black dots randomly over each circle of batter. Okay? Just pipe them randomly. Now, sometimes if I don't want to pipe little dots and make polka dots, I'll actually put the names of people on each one and make the names of my guests or something so I can have personalized twirls. Once you put the little dots on, you can do anything with these. You're going to bake them for 6 to 9 minutes, but make sure you rotate them midway through. So after like 3 minutes, rotate your pan. These cookies brown quickly. And when they're light brown around the edges, take them out of the oven and put your sheet pan someplace safe and take a wooden spoon, grease the handle, like spray it with nonstick cooking spray, and roll each cookie, lift it off gently with a offset spatula and roll it around so your polka dots are facing on the outside, and roll it around and you have yourself a polka-dotted pirouette. You're going to gently slide it off the wooden spoon and put it on a plate. And it will firm up as it cools. It will actually crystallize. The sugar will crystallize and the cookie will become literally crisp as anything. Repeat this with the remaining cookies. Now, you may say, how am I going to do this? I can't do this that fast. Well, and the cookies are hot when you're doing this. So if they cool too much, don't fear. What you do is you put the sheet pan back in the oven, and after a few seconds, give it about 10 seconds, they will soften again. So you sort of can bring them back to life. They'll get malleable again and take them out. That's why I don't want you to make too many at once because it's hard to keep ahead of them. Now, if you're not going to roll them in pirouettes and you're just going to leave them as rounds like I did when I decorated my chocolate cake, that's fine. Then you can bake as many as you want, as quickly as you want. So you will repeat the above procedure, making those pirouettes until all your batter is used up, using your little polka dots before you put them in the oven. And they are fabulous. So there you have the 8 categories of cookies. And on my next show, my last of the series, we're going to discuss my best, not to be missed, cookie tips and tricks to ensure that you get the cookies that you want each and every time, and you don't want to miss it.